It's Mo. It is the middle to the end of December, and that means it's time for me to start my final, my ultimate, the last TBR Tackle book of 2022 and probably of forever, and that is What Are You Going Through by Sigrid Nunez. If you haven't heard of TBR Tackle, it was a super fun TBR busting game that Kieran from Katie Books put on in 2022. In the beginning of the year, we picked 12 books, and then each month he had a bookish content creator help him make a prompt, which often meant that we changed out our entire stack. I vlogged every book that I read for TBR Tackle, so approximately one book and one vlog a month. So you can check out the playlist listed down below. In typical TBR Tackle fashion, I did not pick my last and final book. There was no prompt for December, so it just meant that the last book on your list was the book that you read, but I chose a different book, and if you want to see how I chose that book, you can go back to my November TBR Tackle vlog. But for December, we have What Are You Going Through, and I've had this one for quite a while. I picked this book up, I think on Long Beach Island, New Jersey in the summer of 2021, and I picked this book up because it had a cat on the cover. I didn't know anything about it. It was just a very cute hardcover. When I started reading it, that's basically all I knew about it, except that since then I have heard more about Sigrid Nunez, and this year in 2022, her book The Friend, which is very sad and about a dog apparently, has been making the rounds, and some people really, really love that book. So I was excited to get to this one, even though, because that one is very sad and about a dog, I don't think I will be reading The Friend. I should not have at all been surprised, knowing how sad that book is, that this book is also sad and depressing. I did start reading this book yesterday on Tuesday when I went to my office job, and I don't know how far I am, probably about maybe 50% of the way through. I'm reading it on audio. I found it on one of my free audio sites and I really enjoyed it. This book is quite short, at only 110 pages, so this would have been a breeze to read physically as well. Our main character is a woman seemingly in her middle age, in her late 30s or 40s, probably 40s, maybe even like mid 40s, and she is staying away from her home to visit her friend who is in the hospital with cancer. This isn't her best friend, but they are close, and she has felt the urge to travel to where the friend is in the hospital and stay there for a few days so that she can visit her friend several times in the hospital. The book starts with her in her Airbnb, and she talks about the Airbnb owner and talking to them. She sees in the Airbnb that they have a little like what could you do around here notice board, and she sees a lecture from someone that she knows, so she ends up going to that lecture and listening to that lecture. And this whole book is just that, little vignettes of our main character coming in and out of people's lives. Her talking to her friend in the hospital, her listening to people at this academic lecture, her thinking about the person who is performing the lecture, her thinking about how odd it is to stay in an Airbnb, her going to a cafe, and just the snippets of other people's lives and how they interact with hers throughout this time period. Where I am now, the friend's cancer has returned and she is back visiting the friend when her friend asks her a very tricky and important life question, and our main character has to decide what she's going to tell her friend and if she's going to help her friend with what her friend is asking. So it's definitely very depressing. It's a lot about loss and death and illness. It's a lot about breakups and people being unhappy or resigned to not being happy. But I'm really enjoying it. I like how easily it's flowing and that it seems like such a common everyday occurrence. I like that our main character is observant. I like that she thinks about what people are saying and why they're saying it and relates to them in some way, even if she doesn't really relate to the person that's speaking. So I'm excited to read the rest of it. I'm hoping to finish this one by the end of the week, and then that'll be it. That'll be the last TBR tackle that we ever get. We'll just have to find another TBR game to play. RIP the most fun TBR games in 2022. We have come to the end of TBR Tackle, and we also saw the end of BookTube Spin. So, c'est la vie. We'll have to find something new in 2023. Since we will not be getting another TBR Tackle game from Kieran this year, I decided to make 12 prompts that you could use for your own TBR Tackle. These prompts are set up in months of January, February, March, etc., but you could play around with them. You could pick a prompt at random, or you can follow through. Now, I'm posting this later than I had intended, so I know that we are already going to be at the end or past January by the time it goes up, but I'm still going to do the prompts per month, and then you can use this in 2023, you can use it in 2024, you can mix and match between Kieran's 2022 prompts, or however you like to do it. So just like the original TBR Tackle, to use my prompts, you're going to need to start with a stack of 12 books. I suggest that you take 12 books off of your physical TBR to start. But if you're interested in tackling your audio TBR or your digital TBR, feel free to use those as well. Maybe you're interested in just getting your want to read list down, so if you want to get these books from the library or whatever, that's fine too. You will just need 12 books to start with. Now that we have our 12 books, our prompt for January is very simple. Take a look at your stack of 12 books, take a look at the outfit you're wearing, and pick the book that best matches your outfit. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a towel out of the shower, your bathrobe, your pajamas, a fancy evening dress, or a suit. Whatever book on your stack best matches to you, the outfit that you're currently wearing, is going to be your book for January. Read that book, report back, and meet me here in just a moment for our February prompt. We're back. Have you read your January book yet? If you're playing along with my TBR Tackle 2023 prompts, you should have 11 books left in your stack. And here's where we get into the really TBR Tackle aspect of this game. I want you to take a look at your stack, and any books that are not by people of color, that can be Black, Indigenous, Asian, Middle Eastern, any book not by a person of color, I want you to remove from your stack. How many books do you have left? I want you to take a look at your existing TBR, your digital TBR, your audio TBR, and replace the books that you removed with books by people of color. If you had all authors of color in your original stack, you're good to go. If you needed to replace one, you would have taken the white author out of your stack and replaced it with a person of color author, and now you're ready. How many books did you have to replace from your original stack of 11? Was it a lot? Was it a little? Look at your new stack, all works by people of color, and pick the book you're most excited to read. That's your book for February. Let me know how that book goes, and I'll see you back here in just a moment. We'll go over March's prompt. We are on to March, so we should have 10 books left in our TBR Tackle stack, and these should all be books by people of color. So I want you to write out or imagine your initials. If you have 2 names, use 2 initials. If you have 3 names, use 3 initials. And then I want you to reverse those initials. So my initials are AMS, and I'm going to reverse them to SM. Then I want you to find a book in your stack that has those letters in that order on the cover, in the blurb, in the author's name, on the back, however you can find your initials in reverse order on the book. That is going to be the book that you read for March. If you cannot find any books in your stack that have your initials in reverse order on them in some way, shape, or form, then you'll need to go to your regular TBR and swap a book out. Find a book that has your initials in reverse on it and swap it out for a book on your stack. You can pick whatever book you'd like. That is our TBR Tackle 2023 prompt for March, and we'll see you in just a few minutes to go over the April prompt. book did you read for March? Let us know in the comments below. Are you ready for April's prompt? In April, we should have 9 books left. So I want you to divide your stack into 3 piles of 3. I don't care how you divide it. You can divide it by color, you can divide it by genre, you can divide it by length, you can divide it by author, whatever you would like to do. Divide your TBR Tackle stack into 3 separate stacks of 3 books each. And then I want you to assign each stack a number 1 through 3, called 1, a stack called 2, a stack called 3. And then I want you to ask a friend to pick a number, a random number between 1 and 3, or you can use a random number generator to pick this number, whatever is easier for you. Whatever number is picked, you're going to take that stack and you're going to label the books however you want to label them, 1, 2, or 3. And again, you're going to ask a friend to pick a random number between 1 and 3, or you're going to use a random number generator, and the book that you land on, so if you've labeled your first book 1, 2, and 3, and you get number 3, that's the book that you're going to read for April. Keep us informed. What book did you get for your April prompt? And we'll come back in May for another prompt. We are in May, and in May you should have 8 books left in your stack. To find your book to read in May, I want you to take the letters of the word May, M-A-Y, and find their numerical equivalent. So A equals 1, B equals 2, etc., etc. Once you have those 3 numbers, add them together and then add your age. So whatever age you are now, add that, and then at the end of the number that you come up with, add a 0. So your number is probably going to be somewhere in the 3-digit range, and once you've found that number, I want you to cut that number in half. Once you have that final number, I want you to take that number and find the book in your stack that is the closest to that number and read that book. If you're playing along, it is now June, and in June, we should have 7 books in our stack. In June, I want you to find your favorite color. Use a color wheel from the internet to pick the opposite of your favorite color, or the closest you can find on the color wheel, and then correspond a book in your stack to that color and read that book for June. It is July, and for July you should have 6 books left. We are getting towards the middle of the year. So I would like you to find the 2 longest books in your stack and take them out and replace them with 2 longer books. And then I would like you to find your 2 shortest books in your stack and replace them with 2 shorter books. Now that you have your new stack, take a look at where each book takes place. Goodreads is a good resource for this because they often list the main areas that the books are from, but also if you Google each book, they usually have some sort of description. Find the book that takes place nearest to where you live and read that book for July. We should be up to August in our 2023 TBR Tackle game. And for August, you should have 5 books left in your stack. Please take a look at your stack and see how many of those 5 books were written by women. All the books that were not written by women, please remove from your stack. And yes, you guessed it, I want you to replace those books not written by women for books written by women from your TBR. So now your stack of 5 should have all women authors. August is Women in Translation Month, so ideally some of those are translated works as well, but they don't have to be because you'll see why in our next prompt. To pick your book for August, I want you to look at your stack and I want you to pick out a book with a woman's name that is the same name as a woman you know in real life. So it can be in the title, the author, the characters, the blurb, whichever book you come to first with the name of a woman that you know, I want you to read that book for August. Here we are in September. How was your August read? What book did you end up picking? And what was the woman's name of the person that you know in real life? For September, you should have 4 books left. And yes, if you watched the last prompt, you guessed it. I want you to take a look at your stack, take away any book that is not a translated work, and I want you to swap it out for a translated book. Any book that is a work in translation, whether that is a book that's been translated into English or maybe you speak a a different language and that book was translated from English into the language that you speak, that works. To pick your September read, I want you to look at all the books you have in your stack. Find the original language that those books were written in and pick the book that you know the most words from in that original language. So if you have a Korean, a Japanese, an English, and a Spanish work, maybe you know the most words in Spanish, or maybe you know the most words in Korean. Whichever original language you know the most words in, I want you to pick that book to read in September. And we'll see you back here in October in just a few moments. According to TBR Tackle 2023, the one that I'm making up right now, it is October. And for October, we're going to look at all the last 3 books in our stack, and we're going to check the year that they were published. If any of the 3 books that you have left were published within 10 years of your birthday, so 10 years before your birthday or 10 years after your birthday, you can keep those books. But if any of the books were not published within that 20-year span, you have to get rid of them and replace them with books that are within those 20 years, 10 years before and 10 years after your birthday. Check those dates again, and for your October read, you're going to read the book that was published closest to the year you were born. That's our October book pick. Let me know how it goes, and I'll see you in November. Now it's November, and in November we should only have 2 books left in our TBR Tackle 2023 stack. I want you to check your stack, see how many of those books are written by Indigenous authors. This can be First Nations authors, this can be Indigenous Australian, American, Canadian, South American, Indigenous peoples. Any book by an Indigenous author that you would like. Any books that are not written by Indigenous authors, I want you to swap them out for works by Indigenous people. And now that you have a stack of 2 works by Indigenous people, I want you to flip a coin to pick your November read. Get a coin, flip it, and if it lands on heads, I want you to read the shortest book in your stack. But if it lands on tails, I want you to read the longest book on your stack. Which book did you get for November? Here we are in December. We have come to the end of the 2023 TBR Tackle prompts that I have created to replace Kieran's 2022 game. Don't forget, you can always go back and watch Kieran's 2022 prompts and use those. You can watch mine that I just showed you and use those. You can make up your own prompts. You can play this game with your friends, or hopefully someone else will come up with another fun TBR game for us to play. December is our last prompt, and in December you should have 1 book left on your stack. So I want you to take a look at that one last book, and if it has a name of an animal or a pet that you know, this can be a dog, a cat, a horse, a fish, whatever you like. If there is a name in that book, either on the cover, in the title, the author's name, a blurb, the back, however you can look to see if there is a name in that book that matches a name of an animal or a pet you know, then you can read that book. But if it does not have a name, or you can't find out if it has a name of an animal that you know, then you have to swap your last book out for a book off your TBR that includes the name of an animal that you know. This could be your cat, your dog, or it could be a friend's cat if you don't have animals. It could even be a cartoon cat or dog if you feel that that's appropriate. As you know, TBR Tackle is all about extending, breaking, or bending the rules. So anything that you have done throughout this game to make it work for your TBR and enjoy reading, then it's all good. Thanks so much for watching my TBR prompts that I made up. I hope that someone gets some kind of use out of them at some point, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Now we're going to go back to Past Me to find out what I thought of my last TBR Tackle book. I have finished What Are You Going Through by Sigrid Nunez. I really enjoyed this one. I'm glad that I read it on audio because it was a super fast, quick, easy to read. And I think that it allowed you to sit in some of the questions in a different way than if you were reading it physically. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't have gotten a lot out of it reading it physically, because I think maybe you would have sat in those questions differently. Maybe it would have been more impactful if I had read some of of it physically. I liked how much it talked about grief and different kinds of grief, grieving for people who aren't gone yet, grieving for people who are gone, grieving for people who your relationship has ended with, whether that be family members or significant others. I liked that it had to do with animal grief and all the different kinds of grief, not just the loss of someone who is dying or dead. I liked the way it was written. It was like very matter of fact, but you were also connected with the characters, but also held away from them in a lot of ways. Like, although you felt for this woman losing her friend and dealing with her friend's death, you were never, like, I never cried during this book. I was never at the point of that feeling of losing someone myself. But in so many ways, when you're grieving someone or when you're going through that, you do have that sense of detachment, that kind of like looking over of the situation. You feel horribly sad and irrevocably sad, but you can't cry. You see things from like an outside perspective in a lot of ways, and you see and feel that heaviness on your body and your soul, but it almost doesn't touch you at the same time that it's like constantly touching you. So I thought it was really interestingly done, and I would definitely read more by this author. That was my last TBR Tackle book for 2022. I hope that you enjoyed your process for TBR Tackle 2022. I hope that you had a good last December book. Definitely feel free to use the prompts that I included in this video if you want to continue. I separated them by month, so you can go through month by month, or you can look at them all and choose what you want, whatever you prefer. But since this is the end of TBR Tackle, I want to thank Karen at Katie Books for inventing this and having such a super fun time in 2022 with this. And hopefully one day it'll be resurrected in some way, somehow. Let me know if you've read What Are You Going Through. Let me know if you plan to go through the prompts for TBR Tackle 2022 in 2023. If maybe you didn't participate last year, let me know if you plan on using the prompts that I left, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.